The verse that we really started focusing on is a verse from Parshat Kedoshim, Lo tisna et achecha bilebecha. You should not bear hatred towards your brother in your heart. Hochach tochiach et amitecha. The verse translated, you should not hate your brother in your heart, has many, many deep and significant implications, both spiritually and, of course, psychologically. And this class tonight, as well as next class, and especially the final class of the series, which is going to focus on what do you do when somebody genuinely did hurt you, betray you, act in a very crude and negative way towards you. Again, today, that's not the focus. Today's focus is more or less when you're noticing that someone's off. And as we mentioned in previous classes, that behavior style or communication style might be affecting the generality of the environment. As we discussed the very famous parable that we are all, as the Torah says, Atem koim adam, we're all considered one human being. And just like if, God forbid, someone has an infection in one particular area in the body, often we know that it's not just localized to that particular area, but rather it could spread and incapacitate the entire body. No matter how far the infection is, for example, it could be in the toe. But nevertheless, it's going to affect the head and the heart and so on and so forth. We're all considered to be one human being, and one affects the entirety. As Anne Frank is quoted in her diary, says what one Jew does reflects off of, as far as the world is concerned, what one Jew does reflects off of all of world Jewry, but not so when it comes to the non-Jews. What one non-Jew does, it's localized to them. You don't pull everybody into one boat. And this is very true, and there's a lot of depth to this. And from this particular reason, when the famous mashal, the famous parable that we discussed last week, that if a person is sitting together with someone else in a raft in a ship, and they start drilling a hole into one side of the ship, and the other person is asking, what are you doing? He says, don't worry, it's only my side of the ship that I'm drilling a hole in. So too, when it comes to one's thoughts, one's words, or one's action, it's not just localized to themselves, but rather it has an implication onto every Jew, past, present, and future. From this perspective, we gained an understanding of why do we have to reprove. Reproving is not because we're noticing that someone is off and you want to put them in their place. As we've discussed already several times throughout this course, what connects each and every one of us and makes us and unites us as one is our nefesh elokit, our godly soul. Although our bodies are different, but our souls are all as one. And therefore, when we look to reprove someone, as we discussed the difference between saying hochach tochiach, not to critique, but rather to reprove, and not even to rebuke. As we cited the famous editorial that the Rebbe gave Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sachs in his thesis about rebuke, and the Rebbe says it pained me, because although rebuke and reproof more or less mean the same thing, but there's always a question: how does the other receive it? How does the other person receive what you're saying? The style might be one, and we're going to really delve into this today, but how do they receive it? Because if the aim is to reprove, to improve the situation, then the style should be very analogous and very consistent with the desire to improve the situation. Therefore, the style, the body language, the eye contact, the style of words, the pacing of the words, the tone that we use in order to reproof has to all be consistent with all we want to do here is improve the situation. Because as we're going to see, and we're all familiar to well-meaning people who come in, and I'm certainly no stranger to this because I am a work in progress, as they say, and I'm working on myself since last Yom Kippurim, when I made this in my Yom Kippurim speech, that I'm going to work on the way I deliver my words and so on and so forth. And yes, there's times when I could put a stinger out, a stinger or two, as you say, but nevertheless, we all know what can happen when we mean well, but we use words or a tone or even a glance that it is consistent with reproving and improving the situation. What's bound to happen almost immediately? Defense mechanisms rise up immediately. And the person might even understand that you mean for their well-being. But as we're going to discuss, and we discussed in previous classes, we do comprise of two consciousness. We have the godly soul and we have the animal soul. And the animal soul, nefesh bahamis, the ego in itself, is there to protect us, to animate us, and therefore is always hyper-focused on survivability, which in its perspective, and especially in Western culture, it requires it to be comfortable and safe and so on and so forth. Someone now saying, well, things need to change, guess what's going to happen? The animal soul, no matter how much the godly soul understands, yes, you're right, there has to be changing. Yes, I need to improve myself because things are not going correctly. But not before the animal soul will take that signal and filter it out. I don't want to hear that. I'm not comfortable with these words. Why am I not comfortable? Because it'll require me to get out of my comfort zone and work on myself and change things. And I'm used to things the way they are. In order to avoid or circumvent those defense mechanisms, the style, the thought process, which leads us to this reproof, the words, the body language, the way we sit, the timing, every single detail matters. And certainly the aim is to raise the person, never chas v'shalom to demean them. Never, ever. Incidentally, as we discussed in many of the previous classes in this series, all of this begins with oneself. In order to do this correctly and consistently, we must first and foremost practice on ourselves. In other words, not speak chas v'shalom harshly to ourselves, not to demean ourselves, to demote ourselves, to undermine ourselves, not in thought, not in action, not in words, not in action. You know, that negative inner voice that we have, that comes from the animal soul. And we're going to discuss that inner voice in the last class of the series. But nevertheless, if we're going to do this correctly and consistently with others, we must make sure that we are always talking up to ourselves. We could do better. Things could improve. This perhaps is a tikkun over here, and that's what we need to work on. Reproof requires an invitation to become better. Not chas v'shalom, a condemnation of evil and negativity. As soon as a person feels that they're being condemned, conversation is over. As soon as we start off with the words, something is wrong, you're not good, or anything in between that, the conversation is done. Fight or flight takes over. The person is now going to look to defend themselves. And you know how many times I've sat with couples and families, parents and children, how many times I've already mentioned that I used to do this with my own children. You mean well, but you start saying these negative words, and what happens? The person shuts down. And what do? You go even more. No, you don't understand. It's good. And it starts an entire tug of war. And that begins a battle that's unnecessary. There's no aim to get the upper hand. There's an aim to raise the person, to raise the situation, no matter how negative it may look, no matter how it may appear, and it might be 100% true. It's not good. But the aim is to make it better, not to chas v'shalom bring the person down, nor the situation. All right, let's look at a snippet from the previous Rebbe's talk. It is on page 201, text number 4. Emma, you want to read?
Sure. Absence of enmity. The Torah prefaces the directive, "You shall surely reprove your fellow," with the instruction, "Do not hate your brother in your heart." This informs us that before we criticize someone, we must first eliminate from ourselves anything that bears the mark of agitation, so that while we provide critique, we are free of any feelings other than love. Only on the heels of this effort can our critique be effective.
All right, so the previous Rebbe gives us a very, very important foundational perspective based on this verse. Lo tisnat achicha belibecha. Not only is not enough not to hate the person. I'm not angry at you. I'm telling you this because I care. But do you genuinely love the person? It says, "Hochach tochech et amitecha," you should surely rebuke your fellow. In other words, you must feel a kingship to them, a relationship to them. You must love them. Which part of them? At least their godly soul. If you don't love the person, why are you saying what you're saying? For what purpose? Perhaps it might be haughtiness, ego disguised, as we know that in Hayom Yom, the Rebbe writes that in our generations, we all know that the Yetzer Hara could come looking like the Yetzer Hara, and usually we know how he looks, what he appears like. But in modern generation, the Yetzer Hara could come looking like a big tzaddik with a fur hat and a long coat and tell you in the name of the Torah that I'm doing this because it's important for you. But in reality, it could be destroying the person. If you love the person, you must be aligned with them, with their interest. And how do we know? As we discussed last week, and again on Monday night we cited a teaching from the Baal Shem Tov, and this is a foundational teaching that we must remember every day of our life. Every day. The Baal Shem Tov teaches that a neshama descends into this world for 70 to 80 years in order to perform one favor for another materially and spiritually. Imagine 70 or 80 years in a world with all the ups and the downs that our world, Olam Milashon Ha'elam, brings into their life. For what purpose? To perform one favor for another. But as we discussed on Monday night, and this is tied into this teaching, especially in what we learned last week, what the Midrash says, that it was Balaam that blessed the Jewish people with the most intense blessing, Matovo Alecha Yaakov, and so on and so forth, the most intense blessings. And it was Moshe who said, "V'zot habracha sheberach Moshe ish Elokim b'yom," etc. This is a blessing. The very last parasha. It says this is a blessing of Moshe Rabbeinu bestowed upon the godly man, bestowed upon the Jewish people, etc. When you read the blessings, there's a lot of tochachas in those blessings, a lot of rebuke, of reproof. Says a midrash, and this is where we left off last week. The Chura, seemingly, it would be more fitting for Balaam, the evil sorcerer who wanted to condemn the Jewish people, to curse the Jewish people, and Moshe Rabbeinu to bless the Jewish people. What does the Midrash teach us? Yeah, but had Balaam cursed us, rebuked us, we would have just dismissed it. Listen, he hates us. He doesn't care about us. He's venting. Who is the one that gave us the most authentic reproof? Moshe Rabbeinu. Because every Jew knew that Moshe Rabbeinu loved them uniquely. Every Jew was present, L'nei Kol Yisrael, when Moshe Rabbeinu shattered the luchot, shattered the Torah, the tablets, in order to protect the Jewish people who were sinning. Moshe Rabbeinu took the Torah, Torat Moshe, and shattered it only to protect sinners. In other words, when there was a conflict between Jew and Judaism, Moshe Rabbeinu says, I'm with you. And as we discussed last week, which perek and which pasuk is it? When Moshe Rabbeinu downright charged against a guy, he says, if you don't forgive them, as a matter of fact, there's a different, the question is, where do you put the psik, where do you put the comma? There's another word. If you forgive them or you don't forgive them, wipe me away from your Torah. I don't want to be in this Torah that speaks like this about the Jewish people. Which perek, which pasuk in the book of Shemot? 32, Lev Shebelev, heart of hearts. Heart of hearts. Moshe Rabbeinu says, wipe me away from the Torah. For who? For the Jewish people and even those sinners. That's why he was able to reproof us, because the Jewish people knew full well Moshe Rabbeinu's entire focus is us. That's why we're able to receive his reproof. That's what the Midrash is stating over here. That Moshe Rabbeinu give us praises. Okay, you love us like a good mommy. You're so cute. You're so this beautiful. But you love us. I think you might have a bias. But to give reproof, again, somebody who hates you, he said, you have a bias. You're just condemning me because you're upset with me. And that's why we have to know. If we're going to give reproof, the first question, do I love this person? If not, steer away. It's a mitzvah. It's one of the 613 mitzvot, biblical mitzvot of reproof. But just like the mitzvah of fasting a Yom Kippur begins on the 9th of Tishrei, and the night it concludes at the 10th by night, it has a parameter. So too, the mitzvah reproof, et amitecha. It has to be your fellow. You have to regard them as your friend, as your colleague, as someone who you look up to. If you look down on them, don't say anything. In other words, when you, and on a practical level, what does it mean? When you are upset with someone, and God forbid, chaz v'shalom, angry, which we should never be angry. But if you're angry with someone, spouses, children, this is not the time to say anything. Because if it's not coming from love, it's not going to hit its marker. The person's defense mechanisms are going to go up. And this is going to go very quickly, as we learned on Monday night. It's going to go very quickly from an argument into a fight. Filter. Let's go back to the Baal Shem Tov teaching. A neshama descended into this world between 70 and 80 years just to do a favor for another person, materially and spiritually. It's interesting. You should have l'chora said spiritually and then materially. It says, no. The Rebbe explains this. No, not at all. First, you work on the material. Did you eat today? How do you feel? Do you feel okay? Do you feel safe? Like, in other words, make sure the material welfare is taken care of. And only then you speak about emotional congruency and spiritual uplifting. Where do we see with Moshe Rabbeinu? When did Moshe Rabbeinu reprove the Jewish people after the 40th year, the last days of his 40th year, after defeating Og Melech HaBashan, after going to bat for them? Only then, once they saw that he put in the footwork in his body, in his neshama, and everything, the principles that he lived for, all on the line, and was willing to toss him in a split second, only to help the Jewish people. Now they were ready to listen. And therefore, here's another point that we need to assess before offering reproof. Not only do I love them, does a person understand that I love them? Not know. As we spoke about da'at, I saw Rabbi Shalom was speaking about chokhmah, bina, and da'at, and incidentally, this Monday, we had the same concept in chapter 3 of Tanya. That is to internalize, not just to know, understand, but to internalize, deherin, internalize. Did the person internalize how important they are to you, that you love them? And how? How would they know? You consistently come through for them. Otherwise, you're going to throw words that seem to them as daggers, and their defense mechanism are going to go up immediately. Incidentally, and it's very important to ask, and this is something that we learned in our parenting class. Often as parents, we offer reproof. But, some of us are old enough to have raised children through thick and thin in different layering and different situations. We have to ask ourselves a question. In offering reproof, and we spoke about it in relations to parents and children, but really we could look at it at every single time, every single place, because we're going to see that all reproof has to come like a parent who loves their child to their dear and near child. Is my parenting style akin to a police officer, a traffic officer, or to a drill sergeant?
Drill sergeant.
Wow, let's qualify this. Let's qualify this. What's the difference? What's the difference? We all been in a situation where, as we're driving, behind us we notice a police car that's driving behind us and is turning when we're turning, and we get nervous and we go on our best behavior. All of a sudden, every single signal, we stop now for 3 seconds, for 10 seconds, and we drive not even 31 miles, 25 miles. Why? Out of fear. Out of fear. Out of fear of consequence. But now comes a police officer, and it's very interesting. They have a bad rep for this. Why? Because they come out, sir, license in registration and this and that. Again, they're doing their job. You always have to thank them, bless them, and so on and so forth. But in your hearts of hearts, why do we get bothered by that? Because we know, and I'm not sure if it's true or not, there's a quota that they have to write tickets and this and that. It's, there are Baruch Hashem great officers that, with sometimes I get stopped and you could talk to them a little bit and, you go from 10 tickets to 1 ticket. You could negotiate. They're human beings. But what bothers us? Negotiate. With the police officer. Depends. You speak up to them.
And you're a rabbi, so you get away with it.
No, I got you. Just sometimes it depends on who and when. But
Middle Neck Road, no. Kings Point, yes.
No, just the opposite. Kings Point, for sure, no.
For me, Kingsway was better.
And there you go. But what bothers us about it? A police officer is going to get out of their car. go to write a ticket, and then go back home. Did they really genuinely? Do we feel that they genuinely cared about our driving style, about safety, or do we feel like maybe you're just making money? You have a quota, and again, I'm not implying anything. This might be a complete myth, but in the mind, we're thinking, well, all you're doing is I might not even have the money to give you right now. I might not have the whereabouts to go to a court right now, and you're really impeding my life. And did you change anything? And what about when my car was stolen 2 weeks ago? Where were you then? And when this happened, where are you then? But in contrast to that, the drill sergeant. A drill sergeant is going to push you to your limits and beyond. In our parenting class, where we spoke about one of the most important elements that a parent must develop in their child is self-mastery, the ability not to allow themselves to be okay with mediocrity. That's, as parents, we are commanded to do. To take them, as Eov says, a child is born like a wild donkey, desert donkey, and to raise him to be a mensch, humane. Yeah, we need to stretch them out, and it's not easy. Drill sergeants, I've watched several training videos for Marines. You could see on YouTube, and it's amazing what they have to do. I have two sons who went through, one's Golani, the other one was is still there, Baruch Hashem, in Gaza. And the grueling training that they have to go through, and the drill sergeant shows almost no empathy and no compassion. And yet, in the beginning, there's a great, I can't stand him, I don't like him. At the end, they come to love them. Why? Because after all, they realize they're training them. But you know what? When it comes to battle, they're going in with them. They care about their safety. They want to make them the best because they care for them, and they'll be there with them, and they'll fight with them, and they'll take a bullet for them if they have to. That's the question. Is my style akin to a police traffic officer, or is it akin to a drill sergeant? In other words, the one that I'm reproofing, do they know how much I care about them, how much I'm willing to go to the end for them? And how would they know? Because I've done it. And I'll do it every single time. Even when I'm upset with them, even if I'm getting nothing for them, nevertheless, I'll go to self-sacrifice for it. And not for spirituality even, just to give them what they need, begashmiut. Even if there's no spiritual benefit to it whatsoever. There's already a milah, there's already a virtue. I've shown them love, and showing them and giving them what they need, begashmiut. There's already the mitzvah of ahavta l'reach kamocha. That's filter number 2. And this is the difference between what the Midrash says, the difference between Avraham and Noach. Noach cared about the mission, and that's why he spent 120 years building a ship, yes, in the middle of town, in order to get people's attention. Why are you building a ship in the middle of town? There's no way to get it to the beach. And he did it specifically so people could ask him. But what he would say, listen, you guys are wicked, you're evil, and as a result of your behaviors and your discrepancies, God is going to flood the world. Make tshuva. And all they did is scoffed him. They made fun of him. But in contrast to that, Avraham, when he came out of Mesopotamia, he brought thousands of students with him that he accumulated in a very short period of time. Why? Again, because Avraham cared about the people. Noah cared about the mission. And this is so imperative. You know, there are well-meaning rabbis who come and chastise their community and this and this and this and it's, yes, they feel bad. Yes, they feel this, but they don't feel inspired to become better. So too, we must make sure with our own children, with our own families, with our communities, and even all the four circles of support, we must make sure that at any time we offer reproof comes from love. L'chaim. You want cucumber? It's healthy.
So, Rabbi, is it better to care about the person or about the mission? Is it better to be Abraham or no?
Well, Avraham, no question. That's
No
why.
question?
That's why Noach is not part of Avot. That's why Noach was not part of the forefathers.
I understand. You're right. Yeah.
Because of that. Because yes, he was a tzaddik. Ish tzaddik tamim v'hayabedov. Yes, he was righteous and he was wholesome and so. But he cared about the mission.
But if we take the example of October 7 and the war,
Yeah.
they cared more about the mission.
Who?
Like, we have to do the war to get rid of, Hamas. So
That's
taking care of the mission than the
no.
people. Right.
When it comes to a war, there's different.
Okay.
There are different ethics and so on and so forth. Yeah. Come on.
Silent?
Okay. Text number 5.
Okay. Critique extended simply for the sake of observing the Torah's instruction. You shall surely reprove your fellow. Even if repeated 100 times, we will not have nearly the same effect as critique motivated by a sincere desire to bring benefit to the intended recipient. I'm sorry. This can explain why Noah's admonitions failed to inspire the people to mend their ways.
That's it. Here is an important gauge as we discussed last class, and to bring out a secondary point to it. If you see, and this is an important foundational point in the art of communication and the style of argument, if we observe that we have discussed a topic several times, many times over, and it hasn't yet made its impact, there's a question we have to ask ourselves. Who are we talking to? You come here for the comedic effect, I know. This has been a long life, we need to laugh. Who are we talking to? What does that mean? Often, I find that what are we trying to do when we reprove? We're trying to unlock a door. The person's emotions are locked behind the door. The person's thoughts are locked behind the door. The person's locked behind. Their goodness is locked. So you want to open it so it can come out. What do we inevitably do from the animal soul's perspective? Well, here are the keys that work for me. Let me use that on you. Here are the words and the sentiments that work on me. Let me offer the same words, the same sentiments, the same behavior style that works on me. I'll use on you. And it doesn't meet the mark. It doesn't get observed. Why? The saying is, if we find ourselves repeatedly talking to someone, and it doesn't bear its effect, we have to ask ourselves, are we actually talking to this person? Are we actually using words, sentiments, and body language that the person could understand from their perspective? Or are we using words and sentiments that mean something to us, but to them, that doesn't mean anything? Number two, would you actually be happy, as we mentioned last week, would you actually be happy if the person improves themselves? Remember what we spoke about several classes ago. Behind every argument that someone poses towards us, or any argument that we pose towards someone else, there lays an unrequested or unasked question. Anytime somebody argues with you, or you're arguing, there's a question that's driving it. A question that the person or you are afraid to ask. Because you're afraid of the answer. What if the person says no? Or has said no in the past? And what if the person says yes, which is sometimes even more daunting than the no? Why? Because if you now say yes, guess what? I too have to improve. I too need to rise up. And I'm afraid to hear your yes, because that will require me to take more responsibility as well. It's much easier for the animal soul to hear a no than a yes sometimes. And therefore, when you're asking, when you are, and here's a gauge, what if the person changes? Would you sincerely be happy with that? Or are you using their inability to rise up to the occasion as a reward for your mediocrity? Yeah.
It brings me to the subject of that little boy you mentioned the other day. That he wasn't doing well no matter how many times you spoke to him.
Yeah.
So do you think you delivered the information incorrectly to the child, or?
That's an excellent question. I was a young teacher at that point. My style has greatly...
Oh, this is not recent.
No. This is maybe 14 years ago. I've been teaching this age for 16 years. My style of teaching, my classroom. When I first started teaching, I was criticized by the principal. You teach like you're running a camp. It's like a circus in your classroom. And it's true, I didn't really have classroom management style, and certainly when the kids were off, I didn't know how to. Today, I have the best classroom management in the entire class, in the school. And certainly my parental style has changed completely. At that time, it was different. Maybe I would have taken. Maybe as we discussed, many classes ago, that sometimes the fact that the child just shows up, that in itself is his best, because you don't know what's happening in their home. You don't know what the stress is and everything they're going through. The fact that they're showing up in itself, even if they did nothing, that in itself is so much effort. Instead of saying, well, you haven't accomplished anything. What are you doing already? But here's a question. Remember we spoke about the way that the owner of the house, the balabasta, the woman of the house, views a mouse versus the way the cat views a mouse? Both are chasing the mouse in order to kill it. The difference is the woman of the house sincerely does not want the mouse to be in the first place. If she could do anything to avoid having a mouse in the house, she would have done it to begin with. The cat, as much as he chases a mouse, and he will prey on the mouse, needs a cat to be there. And therefore, if you give an out, he'll find another reason, and another reason, and another reason, and another reason. Why? Because it's not that I want to improve the situation. I actually need the situation to be in such a way. I believe for truth. And this is a question we have to ask ourselves. Before reproofing the person, am I sincere in my intentions. Number one, love towards this person. Number two, improving this person. And am I willing to commit to improving this situation? Not just say, oh, something's wrong. Come on, get your act together. Look at me. I also went through this, so can't you get your act together? Or whatever it is. That's so foundational, so important. Tell you a very important mashal, a very important parable that the previous Rebbe drew from receiving a medical shot. As we learn, we know that the Baal Shem Tov teaches that being that this world is Hashem's world, and everything that happens in this world happens by specific detail, nuanced divine providence. Therefore, everything that we see and everything that we hear and from everything that we experience, there is a lesson to learn in serving God. The previous Rebbe writes in his diary, today I went to the clinic in order to receive a shot. But from observing the way the shot was administered, I learned how to give reproof. Parenthetically, I augment just 2 or 3 steps into more than that the Rebbe writes. But nevertheless, number one, when receiving a shot, again, the previous Rebbe said giving a shot is like giving reproof. It stings, it hurts, but ultimately it's meant to bring benefit to the one that receives it. Number one, are you his doctor? Just because you know how to administer a shot, just because you have the hypodermic needle and the medicine, are you his doctor? Why is that important? Because is he comfortable receiving the shot from you? We know that when we go to the doctor, sometimes we have to disrobe. And it's not comfortable. We feel vulnerable. They have to check us out. They have to touch after this. And then, okay, over here we're going to... Fine. But this is our doctor, and we know what we're coming in for. If just a stranger comes out of nowhere and says, listen, I got a needle, and I see that you're sick, let me poke you. Would you receive it? No. God forbid. You would not receive it. Would you disrobe? No. Would you show vulnerability? No. Why are you walking around with a needle? Why are you coming at me like that? Number one.
It's trust. It's all about trust.
That's very good. So number one, is this your doctor? Number two, do you have an appointment? Do you have an appointment with him right now? Does he have an appointment with you? A doctor just come out of nowhere and just, let me give you a shot right now. Wait, I'm sorry. Why? No, I think you need a shot right now. You know, you want to hear something crazy? In Israel, we grew up in the wild 80s. Man.
I know what you mean.
Yeah. My father was a medic in the Lebanon War. And he would have his medical tools in a bag at home. And I was a very curious kid. I was the oldest of the kids. And my brother Shmuel, who is Baruch Hashem alive and well today in the Shaliach in Amherst. And I was 5 at that point, or 4. He was 5. I was 5 and he was probably 3. So I was 4, he was probably 2.5, 3, just turned 3. Anyway, we learned from my father and my grandfather that we have to wash our hands with hot water because hot water kills the germs. So it's very interesting. Okay. I'm going to tell you 2 stories. and there's a lot to learn from both sides. Number one, when you well-meaning parents tell their children even very important details, make sure to qualify and quantify those details so the children really understand. Because I'll give you 2 points. Once my brother was not feeling well. I went to my father's medical bag, pulled out a the syringe, put a needle onto it. I said, Shmulik, you're not well. I think you need a shot of very hot water. And he says, no. I said, Shmulik, you're not feeling well. We got to do this. And, I was like, nobody was home. And we were like, we were raising ourselves basically. So I said, Shmulik, don't you want to go play? I said, come on. I'll give you a shot. You'll feel better. And he says, okay. And I injected hot water into his behind. Man, it wasn't sterilized water. Like the way we grew up, man, like we're like Superman. Like we are immune to almost anything because of the way we grew up.
Wow.
I said, Baruch Hashem, he's alive.
And you know how to give shots?
No, I don't. And another time, again, in Israel, in the 80s, there was a rampant issue of lice among kids. My brother and I were taking a bath. I said, Shmulik, you have lice. And I said, here, you know what kills bugs? Boiling water. So I took this thing in like a little pot, filled it up with as hot as water as possible, and poured it over his head, scolded him. Now, in my mind, I was curing him. Literally, in both settings, I was curing my brother. Did it work? Well, he's better now.
Does he have burn spots on his head?
That's from other things. There was times I wasn't so careful. But nevertheless, you see, in giving a shot, just because you've heard some things and just because you have good intention doesn't mean that you're qualified to give that shot. Are you the doctor? Are you his doctor? Is it an appointment now? Okay, next. First and foremost, the doctor must be very calm while delivering this. Because imagine a doctor, you come into his office and he is like angry. He's like screaming, I had a bad day, this and this and this. And he's holding 2 or 3 needles. Come here, get your medicine now. Come on, I want to poke you. Get undressed now. Would you receive that? Or would you run away and never come back? That's why it's so imperative that when you're about to give a reproof, it's done only out of calmness. Only in calm times. Not in the moment of argument, not in the moment, certainly not in the moment of a fight. It has to be set, and we got to talk. And we got to set the stage. We got to set the environment. It has to be done behind closed doors, even if it's your doctor, and even if he means well, and even if you have an appointment. Certainly, you're not going to go to the front in the front by the secretary, and he's going to say, "Take off your pants now. We're going to give you a shot." It has to be behind closed doors. So to reproof should not be done publicly. It should be done very quietly behind closed doors, so as not to embarrass a person. So as not to hurt the person. And this is something so important. I've recently had to backtrack with someone that I did this. I didn't mean it. I really didn't mean it. But it came out that way. And even though I pulled this person aside, but not aside enough, and that wasn't the time, it wasn't, and again, I had to backtrack, I have to apologize, and so on and so forth. We're human beings, we have our ups and downs, but it's important as soon as you realized You don't hold on to it. You don't say, well, I already said it. It's going to look like I'm weak if I apologize. And remember, we spoke about several months ago, the rewind button when it comes to relationships. Give the privilege of the rewind. Don't say, well, you already said it, that's it, we're done. You already said it. Give the privilege of the rewind. Let the person say, I made a mistake. Or you could say, I made a mistake. Let's try to fix it. Listen, I was off. I wasn't thinking. Whatever it is, be honest. Because again, the aim is to fix and raise. Not to Chas v'Shalom hold down and double down on toxicity and let that be the reality. Because you already said it, because I already said it. Next, the person who's receiving the shot, the previous Rebbe writes, is told to relax. Relax your arm. Why? Because if you're tense, you know what's going to happen? The needle is going to hurt more. And the aim is not to hurt the person. The needle is a necessary mechanism to perforate the skin and introduce the medicine. But the aim of the needle is not to hurt the person. Although it says is brought down that a prick of a needle in this world removes 1,000 judgments from the world to come. But that's not our cheshbon. That's not our account. We should, I'm giving you a needle so to remove 1,000 judgment from you. That's if if a person has to receive it for themselves. Not, listen, I'm doing you a favor by poking at you. Next, you make sure that the needle itself is sterile. Said the previous Rebbe in here, what's the delivery mechanism? The tongue. Tongue, you're going to speak to the person. The tongue is a needle. You're introducing the medicine through your words. Make sure that the tongue, the previous Rebbe says, is sterile from any toxins. What toxins? The previous Rebbe says, and this is so vital. I would say this is probably the most vital element. Is my tongue sterile from ego? Am I saying this because I'm angry? Because you hurt me? Because I'm not in a good mood? Or because I'm trying to prove something? That's toxins. And it's going to, Chaz v'Shalom, be introduced into the internal. It's going to destroy everything from the inside. When you are, again, reproof has to come from, I love you. I care about your well-being. I know you could do better. I know this is not you. Or this is not us and we got to work on it. Because I believe in us. I believe in how good we are. Not what's the matter with you. Why can't you already do this to everybody? Look at everybody. What is this? Never, never, never. Person has to be calm. The doctor has to be calm. Never offer reproof when you're angry, when you're upset, when after this or after this. It's not the time. It's not the place. Next. Choose the medicine. Choose the exact words that you're going to be using. Realizing that one medicine is not going to work for someone else. And also, how much medicine? To a child, you give one level of medicine. To a teenager, another, an adult, the size, the weight, and this. And in other words, it's not one size fits all. It's not like, well, I spoke to you already, so it shouldn't work for you too. No. Which words? First of all, what are you focusing on? What one point that you're focusing right now? Don't go off the rails. This, and by the way, this, and by the way, last week is this, and last this, and this. No. Chaz v'Shalom. Imagine offering, even in vaccines. If you're into vaccines or not, we all know one thing. Parents who do allow vaccines for their babies usually space it out. Not in one shot. In other words, let the body absorb. Not in one shot. It could create a haywire in the body. So too, when you're going to deal with one particular point, you deal with that point. Whatever it is, doesn't matter. Keep everything else out. Right now, we're focusing only on this. And choose the words that are going to express the medicine, the healing for this particular situation. Next, you clean the area. But you're about to perforate the skin. You're going to create a hole where bacteria could enter. You have to clean it. How do you clean it? First and foremost, you begin with kindness, with love. You begin with kindness. Sterilize with kindness. You know I love you. You know I care for you. You know, and you draw them into the conversation. Because you want to make sure that they do not mistake it, that you're trying to hurt them. Because it's going to, number one, they're not going to listen to it. They're not going to internalize it. And number two, chaz v'shalom, they might take it as you're attacking them. And that's going to create, instead of a reproof, because immediately, as we spoke about on Monday night, it could right away turn into a fight. And you don't want that. You want to avoid all of those pitfalls. Next, you inject the medicine, you inject the medicine, and you don't let the needle linger. In other words, you said what you need to say, don't oversell it. You spoke about it, that's it, we're done. You got it? Good. You got it? Let's move forward. Take the needle out immediately. You know, okay, now that I got the needle in, let me just start like waving it. No, chaz v'shalom. Don't oversell. You said what you needed to say. You introduced the medicine. Let Hashem do the rest already. You took the steps, the necessary steps. Understand, there's Saita Dishmaya, there's help from Hashem. It's not only your words. There are different elements at play here, and God's help is in play. You said what you needed to do. Take a pause. Now, you remove the needle, you patch it up. Love. You finish off with kindness, with warmth. And again, in a healthy relationship, and I advise this to couples all the time, it takes skill to offer reproof. But even if you don't have the skill, one of the greatest elements that will remove the defensive mechanisms is love. If it's a spouse, if it's a child, hold their hands, pet them while you're talking to them, look into their eyes, closeness. Don't stand over them like this. You want everybody's sitting. You know why? Because when you're standing, your fight or flight mechanism it's ready to go. You're sitting down. Yeshuv adat. You're sitting down. You're introducing stability. Don't stand over them because you're showing dominance and they're already being afraid. Sit down calmly, moving closer to them. Hold them if you can. Pet them. In other words, you want to make them feel loved. You are accepted. I'm here to help. I'm not here to push. I'm not here to flatten. I'm here to raise. Because I love you, because I care about you. And then you clean up again with words of kindness, with words of love. Listen, I know it was difficult. I know. It's not easy to deliver and it's not easy to hear this. I know that. But we're here for this together. We're going to work through this. I promise you. It's you and me together. I'm here for you. I'm not Chaz v'Shalom looking down at you for this. I want you to understand this. As a matter of fact, I'm looking up to you because I believe in you. Again, because if you're not looking and you don't sincerely look up to the person, don't say a word. If you don't believe that they could actually grow, don't say a word. Don't. You're not helping. You're going to destroy. I'll tell you, and I posted this video, and I beg of you, please watch this. I put it in our parenting chat. I don't remember if I put it on our nurturing relationships chat. But please watch this video from Avi Fishoff, who really, really had a lot to do with my parenting style, twisted parenting. The Torah says, "Bal yidach mimeno nidach," that no reject will ever remain permanently rejected from God. That eventually Hashem will draw him back. The luminescence in the Torah will illuminate him and revert him back. What does it mean? No reject will remain rejected by God. You know, sometimes, and I'm just quoting what he says, but I'm going to tell you from other sessions that I had with him, and he's a master. I mean, he is an expert. The greatest Rabbanim, the greatest speakers of the world come through him. I've seen personal results from him in my own parenting, with my own children. You know, sometimes in a crowded street, in a crowded event, people like push, like they walk into each other by, in 770 and like crowded, so people walk like and they push. Okay, you can push, bang into it, whatever it is, fine. God forbid, what if somebody has a broken foot, a broken hand? Would you push into them even by mistake? Would you go, hey, what's happening? And you have Chaz v'Shalom, you wouldn't do that. You'd be so sensitive. They're not in a place to receive this right now. You're going to be hurting them. If a person feels rejected already, if they have this self-loathing complex or self-judgmental complex, or they feel that everybody looks down on them and nobody really gets them, the worst thing you could do is add to that. And how do we do this? A lot of times we do this. We come and offer well-meaning advice, and in fact it hurts them even more. I'll tell you a story.